Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sherlockian interview. My name's Steve Emmett. I'm the Managing Director of MX Publishing, and today we're interviewing Stephen Philip Jones. Good afternoon, Stephen.
Good afternoon, Steve. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. It's just about afternoon where you are. You're somewhere in the States.
Right, just after 1 o'clock, I'm in Iowa, so Central Time here.
Fantastic. And decent weather, still got a bit of summer there?
Yeah, we've been pretty hot. The last week or so has been a little more moderate, so that's been nice. But yeah, we got a lot of summer left here. So
Fantastic. Well, let's jump straight into your writing, and let's start with these three. Tell us a little bit about these books.
the one on the far left, Bushwhackers, that's actually the first book I ever had published. It's a Western, and just found a publisher who was looking for Westerns, and I was looking to get published. So um, it's still a bit of a mystery. I think about everything I write at least has a mystery structure. You know, there's always a question at the end, how's the climax going to turn out or so on. But that's just so ingrained in me from being a Holmes fan. And that one is not about it, but it was inspired by a group of killings that took place in Colorado. A few years after the Civil War, they were known as the Cross Killings. And these folks that they couldn't catch were going around bushwhacking folks. And I used that as a springboard for a new story. And I really enjoyed it. It's the only time I've written a Western. I do another one, but there's no market for me to go into it now, so I haven't done a second one. That middle book, you can see it says Henrietta Hex. At the top, you can see where it says action novel. It's owned by an animator out here in the States named Shannon Denton, and he created several characters that he's looking to turn, well, like their properties, and he tries to pitch them to someone. But he has a whole series of these books, and I was asked to write. So he actually created the character, but he allowed me to come in, and we worked out the story together, and he gave me a lot of freedom on it. And I really enjoyed it because when I wrote it, my daughter was 12 years old at the time, and so I modeled the character Henrietta after her. She looks a little like that picture there, not too much. She doesn't like to have it brought up. That actually originally came out around 2009, but it just came out in paperback this year. And my daughter's grown now. She teaches third grade, and I let her know, hey, the book's out in paperback. She goes, great. So I've given her copies to show to her students. I don't know how happy she is about that, because now she has to admit that's her in the book there. And it's a supernatural young adult book. Yeah. The last one, as you can, if anybody knows anything about me, I write comics as well as novels and audio scripts and nonfiction. I've taught comic writing classes here at Kirkwood Community College. I haven't done it for a few years, but I did it quite regularly for a while. And I took those notes and turned it into a book. So, because there's a lot of comic writing books out there now, but when I was a kid, there weren't any. You didn't have anywhere to go to learn how to do it. And there really aren't too many that are just simple, basic, here, this is how you do it. Here's the tools. Now take them and learn. So that's what comics writing is. And it's just based on my own classes. So that's what those three books are about.
Okay, and you've got two more here. So yeah, this looks like are these comic books, or are they?
The one on the left is it's almost a vanity project. If you do comics for a while, and I've been doing them since 1987, you build up a little backlog of short stories that maybe got published once and nobody saw, or maybe you did them and they never got published. That happens a lot. The publisher that I go through, mostly Caliber Comics, the publisher there, Gary Reed, every once in a while would just try to encourage me, like, why don't you take all that stuff you have and put it in one book? Okay. And years and years and years would go by. I never did it. And finally, he talked me into it. So it is a collection of that. Unfortunately, just as I finished the book, I put it together. They let me do the interior layouts, which is kind of nice. And I sent it off to him. I sent him off on a Saturday, and the next day, that Sunday, Gary passed away. So he never got to see it. It's dedicated to him. And I didn't know if it was going to come out because it really is such a kind of a personal thing. Oddly enough, it has a blurb by Clive Cussler at the top. I may not be able to read that, but he gave it a blurb as well. Doesn't sell a lot, but I'm very proud of it because it shows kind of the path of my work from when I was very young to just a few years ago. So that was nice. The one on the right just went on Amazon yesterday, a little earlier than I expected. So there's not any promotion or anything out there yet, but now I got to hurry and get it done quicker than I thought. It's a novel. It's the first in a series. The series is called Lovecraftian, and it actually takes all H.P. Lovecraft stories and reimagines them as one single universe epic story. And this is the first book to come out. I'm not sure how many books there will be. I'm not worried about that, and Calibers isn't either. The second book will be out hopefully soon. And it's just that series. That's what it's about.
Fantastic. And jumping into Sherlock Holmes now, you're kind of a serial contributor to anthology, Stephen, and it's fantastic to see. So, the one on the left-hand side is close to my heart, Imagination Theatre's Sherlock Holmes. We're doing the complete Jim French scripts coming up shortly, but this is from the first book, which is a collection of scripts from a bunch of different writers for Imagination Theatre. So tell us a bit about your contribution to that one.
Yeah, if I understand right, Imagination Theatre has a script from every writer who ever contributed to the series. Let's see, on that one, I think I did 2 scripts for them, and it's the second story. It's actually in the story we're going to talk about in a little bit, the anthology that's coming out. That's actually a short story adaptation of the script that's here. I've always been kind of interested about the Great Hiatus period. I know other writers have written stories about it, but it seems kind of like except for what Holmes mentions in The Adventure in the Empty House, it seems kind of like you got a lot more room to play with where you don't with the other stories. You you have to obey by what happens either the stories and don't contradict that. So this was my first attempt. It's a story that takes place right after Watson thinks that Holmes has passed away, and a mystery that takes place after that. It's called A Case of Unfinished Business. So my script in that story is there. That middle book, again, it was Gary Reed of Caliber. He would come up with these ideas. He knew I had written those two scripts for Jim French production, and he just thought it'd be a good idea. We had the Sherlock Holmes stuff sells pretty well for Caliber. So he thought, well, why don't we take those scripts and put them in a book? Fans might enjoy reading it. And I thought, well, 2 scripts isn't going to do it, so I recommended maybe a couple more scripts by M.J. Elliott, the regular writer for Imagination Theatre. So he suggested it, and about 3 weeks later, we had the whole thing together and out there on Amazon, which was really neat. So that, if you want to see both my scripts, they are in there, and on that Sherlock Holmes on the Air, and a couple of really excellent scripts by Matthew Elliott. The one on the right are actually comics, they're graphic novels. They were the first things I ever did with Sherlock Holmes, and they're pastiches, and one is Holmes meets the Phantom of the Opera, the other is Holmes meets Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And the Jekyll and Hyde's about 24 pages, and the Phantom of the Opera is 48. It was an actual graphic novel. So that's what that one is.
That's fantastic, and really fast. I'm really interested in particular on the one on the right-hand side as to how you went from Phantom of the Opera to Jekyll and Hyde, because it's exactly what Kate Workman did with her novels. So we published both of Kate's books, and she started with Phantom of the Opera, and then she went on to Holmes versus Jekyll and Hyde. So how did you pair those 2 up?
It'll be a little disappointing, but here it goes. The reason with the Phantom of the Opera is that story's a little bit old. It's a couple decades old. I actually was in England for a very short period of time when the Andrew Lloyd Webber play debuted in London. I remember the Sunday newspaper, and there was this invert, and there was all these photographs of it. Nobody knew how well it was going to do. I wish I had kept it. It might be a collector's item now, but these beautiful photographs. And then I came back to the States, and up until that time, it was almost impossible to find a copy of the book by Gaston Leroux. Well, when the play came over to America, it just was huge. And all of a sudden, people found out it was public domain. So you could get a copy really easily. It was the first time I got to read it. And reading it, it just kind of struck me like, well, this isn't a supernatural character thing. He's pretty formidable. I think he'd give Holmes a rough time. And that thought popped in my head. It was like, well, I'd like to give that a shot, see if it would work. And I pitched it to Caliber and they liked it. So it went from there. And like I said, it was the first time I ever wrote it, and it was very intimidating to write Holmes for the first time. A character you respect and who's a genius, and I'm not. But the leap came, I was visiting Gary up in his house in Michigan, and he's a Sherlockian, he was. And he had a list of stories he wanted to do. He just started listing off the titles, and he threw out this one title, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Holmes, and that just stuck in my head. I mean, a couple of weeks go by, I'm back in town, and I just finally call him. I go, I'd really, if you don't mind, I'd like to take a shot at that, which is odd. I'm a huge monster fan. I like the Universal horror films and so on. That may be my number one influence, if not Holmes and Poe. But I'm not a particular fan of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So it wasn't one I would search on my own, but I just thought that was fascinating. And it was a tough go on it. But when I finally got a handle and it clicked, I'm pretty happy with the story. I thought it turned out well. But if not for Gary mentioning the title, I may never have done that story.
That's fantastic. It's such a curious link that both you and Kate chose the same path on that. Moving on to a really fascinating project that some of our viewers will be familiar with, The Art of Sherlock Holmes. So this is a project conceived and curated by Phil Growick, 2 times Sherlock Holmes novelist in his own right. The idea was to bring a dozen or so stories together. It ended up being 15 into a book. Most of those stories sourced from the MX book of New Sherlock Holmes stories, which we'll talk about in a moment. But the idea was quite incredible, which was to get an artist to create a piece of art based on the stories. We've gone on to produce the second book, which comes out in October, which is USA-wide. But this book was 15 artists from the West Palm Beach area. And the artist that was allocated to your story is a guy called Robert St. Croix, who's actually a sculptor. It mainly does sculpture, but he's also an artist and a painter. And you can see now that the book's out, we were able to reveal the piece of art that was created was on the right-hand side. Tell us a little bit, Stephen, about what it was like to see what Robert had done with your story.
Oh, it was different. I mean, I like I said, I've worked with comics, but there I have some control. I'll write a script and I'll give it to an artist and say, this is what I like to have drawn. And we'll work together. And it's like, well, we even go so far as developing character sketches and so on. I had absolutely no control like this time, and it was just completely open to his interpretation. I got to admit, when we were looking at all the paintings as they were coming out, and you were doing this thing where you could just see a small sliver of them, but we couldn't tell what, I had no idea which one was mine. I didn't know until the book came out. But that what I kept seeing, and like I said, I'm, as you know, big monster fan, ghost fan. I was like, oh, I kind of hope that's mine. There's really not a ghost in the story. He's being a little interpretive of it. It's called The Case of the Petty Curses. I think if you read the story, though, and give it some thought, it packs a wallop when you think about what that picture really represents when you get to the end of the story. So it was neat to do that. I like the atmosphere and so on. And the thing is, I mean, I went and bought a print, which you can go to the Conan Doyle estate website and you can buy these, and mine showed up. I haven't got it framed yet. I'm waiting for a sale at our shop because it costs a lot of money to frame, but I want to get it framed and up on the wall. I'm really proud of this picture. I keep finding little things in it. I mean, I think about a couple of weeks ago, I was looking at it, and you can see on her right hand, she's holding this candelabra, but I didn't notice until a couple of weeks ago when her left hand, she's holding a key. It's kind of hard to see, but that's important to the story as well. So he's built in all these little elements that are important to the story. I even think the coloring, the way the house is colored gray, and then he puts in that very vibrant in the background, it helps her stand out, but it also kind of reflects the story and the house she lives in. So I thought he did a wonderful job. I try to thank him. I try to get on Facebook and thank him, and he's never gotten back. So if he's watching, really, thank you. I was really excited to see the picture. I'm really proud of it. I don't know if I'll ever have a chance to have something like that happen again, but it was an honor, and I thought he did an outstanding job.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating project, and expanding now, as I mentioned, to the USA edition in October, and we have the first global edition coming out next May, which will be artists from all over the world, and we're already almost full in the second global edition as well. So it's proving to be a very popular project. And it wouldn't be possible to do the art of Sherlock Holmes if it wasn't for this project. So the MX Book of New Sherlock Holmes Stories, and you appeared first in volume 7. So this is the project conceived by David Markham,
yes,
editor. And David was getting a bit fed up with the modern adaptations of Sherlock Holmes and was yearning for some traditional Holmes. These are quite big volumes because they've got, this is one of the volumes here, so they're quite meaty because they carry 20 to 30 stories per volume. So the collection is now up to volume 16 through 18, which are coming out in October and currently on Kickstarter. And you're in volume 17.
Yeah.
And there's some massive names that have taken part in this. In the current editions, we've got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Previous editions, Nicholas Mayer, Lee Child, Lindsay Fay, many big names, Bonnie McBird. So it's a wonderful collection. It raises money through all the royalties for the Stepping Stone School for Children with Learning Disabilities, which is based at Undershore. And tell us a bit about the story that you've got in 17, Stephen.
17, I mentioned a moment ago that I was interested in these setting stories like during the Great Hiatus. And this was the second story. I actually did write a script of it to send to Imagination Theater, and it never got produced. They were temporarily out of business. They're coming back this October in a way, which is good news. I don't know if they'll ever go back to those scripts. But I had this laid out. And again, it was a story I wanted to tell that would show after World War I. Holmes and Watson really haven't seen each other since the end of the war. They've been in contact. Holmes stops to visit him one day. He had just gone to visit Mycroft, and he's kind of in a melancholy mood. And the two get talking, and they both realize they had both, during the hiatus, worked on a mystery and adventure for Mycroft. And it ends up that it was linked. They were linked together, which I didn't know. So they share the story. When Watson tells his part first, and then Holmes tells the other, and they're trying to be careful because they don't want to, I'm thinking, I'm blanking on the word, but they have a confidence with Mycroft, and they don't want to go against that. So that story was really that, just Holmes and Watson, and then their reaction to what they had done and not knowing that they had actually, in a way, worked together during that time. It was interesting because David is working, I think, on the 2020 annual, and he had sent out an email and asked if anybody be interested. And I had two stories studying there, and I said, well, David, could I send these? And he said, fine. And he's the one that came back and said, we've got this anthology coming out, and I've got a hole between 1891 and 1894. I don't have a story that goes there. And if you could make a few changes, it would be perfect. So I'm like, well, it's nice to hear that when you submit. So we made the changes. So I didn't intend to be in the anthology. I thought I was shooting for the 2020 annual, and I think my other story is going to be in there. But it's really neat. I didn't picture being in here. And I think there's a total of 49 stories and 3 volumes here. If this makes a nice chain for them and it works and is complete, I'm really honored to be there. So.
That's fantastic, and so it's brilliant that you're in second time, and sounds like you might be in there for the third time as well. As I mentioned before, it's now by far the biggest collection in the world, and we keep trying to encourage David to go and talk to Guinness, because he's probably Guinness World Records, because he's edited more Sherlock Holmes stories than probably anybody ever done before. That's been fascinating talking to you, Stephen. For fans that have seen something that they like, you can go to Amazon USA, and
Yep.
find Stephen's author profile there. It's been a delight to talk to you, and I look forward to lots more Sherlockian stories from you.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks, Steve.